path to peace in the Middle East is the so-called two-state solution, that there should be a state of Palestine as a member state of the United Nations, living alongside the state of Israel, with both states having their security. And this two-state solution is the only way to peace, because there are two peoples that have been essentially fighting over the same land for many decades. So why doesn't it happen? It doesn't happen mainly because Israel rejects having a state of Palestine next door, and the United States has backed Israel in its rejection of a state of Palestine. Now, this sounds strange. How could one country object? This should not be the decision of Israel. This should be the decision of the world community to end this hot war, which is now also killing tens of thousands of innocent people in Israel's assault on Gaza. But under the rules of the international system, the creation of a state of Palestine as a UN member state depends on a vote of the UN Security Council. That vote was first proposed already 13 years ago when the Palestine Authority proposed membership in the UN. When an entity proposes UN membership, it goes to the Secretary General of the UN, and then the Secretary General clears it and sends it to the Admissions Committee, which is essentially the UN Security Council itself. This happened back in 2011. And at the time, Admissions Committee said, well, Palestine meets all the criteria for becoming a UN member state. But Israel didn't want it. Israel wanted to rule over the entire territory. And the United States said to the Palestinians, well, we understand, yes, membership, but why don't you just accept observer status right now? And the Palestinians, who are vulnerable and weak, said, okay, if the U.S. says so, because the U.S. promised it will soon be followed by membership. That was yet another lie of many, many lies over many decades. So 12 years later, in the context now of a massive, cruel, war crime-ridden destruction of Gaza by Israel, the Palestine Authority said, look, we made this application. We renew the application because it was accepted. It wasn't dismissed. It wasn't rejected. It was put on hold because we listened to the United States, unwisely, I would add. So this was taken up again, and the UN Security Council voted in April overwhelmingly in favor of Palestine as a UN member state. And then what did the United States do? It vetoed it. So the vote in the UN Security Council was 12 in favor, 1 veto, the US, and 2 abstentions, Switzerland and the UK. Now, this is again one country blocking peace, but the rest of the world is saying, come on, of course we know the answer. So this went from the UN Security Council to the UN General Assembly. And there was a vote in the UN General Assembly, should Palestine be a UN member state? And the vote was 142 in favor and 9 against. Who were the 9? The US, Israel, of course, some very small islands, and a few countries that for whatever reasons fell into the US camp on this. But overwhelming world support. And the UN General Assembly said, well, we need a conference to put this into effect now. The world is united. The UN is the right venue. And the veto of the United States needs to be overcome by making clear that the whole world is on side except for Israel, which opposes absolutely unjustly, and the United States, which has isolated itself diplomatically by this maneuver. In May, the Arab League countries met in Bahrain and had a very good declaration, the Bahrain Declaration, which said, we're ready for peace, We're ready for normalization with Israel, but it must be based on the two-state solution. And this is a peace offering. This is the way to peace. And at the end of that meeting, the King of Bahrain went first to Moscow to discuss this with President Putin. And then he came with the Arab delegation that met with President Xi in Beijing. And the King of Bahrain, carrying the Bahrain Declaration, said, here is the path. So my recommendation is that China strongly support a UN General Assembly-backed global conference so that the world opinion is very clear, so that no country has a veto against world opinion, so that it can become clear to everybody that blocking the two-state solution is actually blocking peace. It's not just blocking a state of Palestine, it's blocking the real solution. And in this area, China will, of course, be on the side of the vast proportion of humanity, on the side of the Arab countries, the side of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the side of the non-aligned movement countries, the side of the G77 countries. The U.S. will be diplomatically isolated, but it deserves to be if it's on the wrong side of global opinion. And this is what we need. We need peaceful ways to show that rational, decent thinking leads to a particular solution. We don't need wars for this. We don't need more violence for this. We need to show that the world is united for peace, and that that's not even against Israel. That's for Israel's security. But Israel cannot continue to rule over millions of Palestinian people. That's not acceptable. That's not a way to peace.